So good morning to you once again, good friends, and welcome to our Sunday series. If I was to mention the name of Eric Carle, would you know who I was talking about? If I mentioned the children's book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, you would probably know straight away. This was the famous book written and illustrated by Eric Carle, the most famous of the ones that he wrote. It sold 55 million copies overall in 62 different languages, a runaway bestseller. Eric Carle has recently died at the age of 91, which has brought his work back to public consciousness again. If I mention to you, though, the Bible, you would know almost certainly that every year so many copies of it are sold that it is never recorded in the bestseller list because nothing else comes close to it. Over 100 million copies are produced every year. It's estimated that over 5 billion have been printed over time. The full Bible is available in 704 different languages, with a portion of it printed in at least 3,415 languages, and that number is growing month by month. There is no other book like it in the world. However, the place and importance of the Bible is being eroded in our contemporary church today. And so I want to turn our attention again this morning to the third alone in our series. We've looked at grace alone and faith alone. Today I want to look at Scripture alone. Many Bibles have the words Holy Bible printed on the spine. It should really say, not Holy Bible, but God's Bible. Most of us come to the Bible as a result of our commitment to Jesus Christ and our admiration for him and our discipleship of him. Now, the Bible is rather like a long pipe, with Genesis at the beginning and Revelation at the end. But we get into this pipe about 2/3 of the way along its length by reading the 4 Gospels about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. So we come into the Bible through Jesus. That's fine and just the way that it should be. But then we need to view the Bible through Jesus' eyes and think about the Bible with Jesus' mind. The Old Testament, the first 2/3 of the Bible, was the Bible that Jesus himself had. He believed it, he quoted it, he lived by it, he fulfilled it. We have a record of Jesus quoting from at least 14 of the Old Testament books. He drew material from the laws, from the prophets, and from the poetic books. Jesus treated the Old Testament as God's Bible, and so should we. Now, it's clearly right that we should put the Bible on a pedestal over and above all other books. But here's today's question. What place should it have in our thinking? How much should it control the things that we believe? Since ancient time, a touchstone has been used to check the purity of precious metals. The touchstone was made of slate or lyddite with a finely grained surface. So when the soft metal was drawn across it, it would leave a visible line, and the color of the line would indicate the purity of the metal. The Bible is our touchstone. It tests the purity of our thinking about God and about spiritual things. The Apostle Paul put it this way: all Scripture, he said, is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. It is God's book, God-breathed. He's the one who inspired the authors, and so that puts the Bible apart from all other books in existence. It gives it unique authority. It makes it into the touchstone of human thought. We need to test the precious metal of the way that we think against the Bible and see whether what we think is right and true and pure. The Bible is useful for teaching, said Paul. This means that our church doctrines and our thinking about God must be drawn from the Bible. We'll learn a lot about God from studying nature. We'll learn of his greatness, his power, his creativity, his glory. We'll learn a lot about God from studying science. It's been said that the scientist thinks God's thoughts after him. We'll learn about his dependability, his consistency, his complexity. But only from the Bible will we learn about his holiness, about his justice, about his compassion, about his love. It isn't that we can't find truth anywhere other than the Bible, but that all truth, all that we believe, must be tested by the touchstone of the Bible. For what Scripture says, God says. One of the problems for the church over the years is that from time to time it wanders from the teachings of the Bible. This was particularly true in the 16th century, and the church had to be reminded to come back to the Bible and check its doctrines, its creeds, its traditions, and its teachings against the Bible. Our church is getting into a similar period once again in our secular age today. So the Bible is useful for teaching. Paul said it is also useful for rebuking. Because it doesn't change, however much people would like it to, the Bible stands as a guardian, pointing out where we have got things wrong in our thinking and behavior. It doesn't just speak to the world around us and warn that there will be tears before bedtime if contemporary society continues on a pathway away from God. The Bible also speaks to the church as well as to the world, and warns the church not to overthrow the clear and specific teachings of Scripture or to try to explain them away. Our bishops in Wales and the governing body of our church are poised to take us away from the Scriptures on matters of human sexuality. They need to be reminded that the authorities of the world and the authorities of the church are under the teachings of Scripture, not above them, are subject to the teachings of Scripture, and they are to learn from them. So the Bible is useful, says Paul, for teaching, for rebuking, and also, he says, for correcting. The Bible doesn't just say, this is wrong. The Bible also says, that is right. We aren't left in a state of confusion where all we know is what not to believe and what not to do. But rather we've been told clearly what we are to believe and what we are to do. All of the principles for belief and behavior are here within the pages of our Bible. Truth is here, explained to us, exposed to us, final, permanent, and authoritative. The Bible, fourthly, says Paul, is useful for training in righteousness. Just as our athletes are preparing for the Tokyo Olympics, every single day they are pushing themselves forward, trying to achieve an additional millimetre of distance, shave off a fraction of a second from their timing, improve their muscle tone and their mental alertness so that they will be absolutely ready for their competition. So today is another day for you and I to train just a little bit more in righteousness. Here's the gold standard example for us in the Jesus whom we are following. So today, one more stretch in compassion, one more stretch in generosity, one more stretch in thoughtfulness, one more stretch in selflessness. Today, one more effort one more reaching out to others. Today, one more look at the Master, one more look at the course that he has called us to run. Stretch a little bit more in holiness. Continue the race. Reach out beyond what has been achieved so far. So here it is, the God-breathed scriptures. They are good for teaching, they're good for rebuking, they're good for correcting, and they're good too for training us in righteousness. John Wesley, the great Methodist church leader from a couple of centuries ago, wanted to be described as homo unius libri, a man of one book. It wasn't that he didn't read other books, because he did. He also wrote many of his own. It was that he was mastered by this one book, the Bible. And as a result, he touched 2 continents for Christ. Perhaps we should finish with that simple Sunday school lesson. Bible, B-I-B-L-E. Best instructions before leaving earth. B-I-B-L-E, the Bible. Scripture